the last to break away. How Palau became one of the world's youngest nations. By the early 1990s, the Cold War had thawed, empires had collapsed, and independence movements had reshaped nearly every corner of the world. Nations had been born in fire, treaties, and revolution. And yet, one country, small, remote, and ocean-bound, was still waiting. That country was Palau, and in 1994, it would finally become one of the youngest sovereign nations on Earth. But Palau's journey wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. There were no armies, no uprisings. It was a struggle of paper, principle, and persistence, a story of a people who said, "We'll be free, but only on our terms." A history written by others. To understand Palau's independence, you have to understand its history as a territory passed from empire to empire. First, the Spanish claimed it in the late 19th century. Then it was sold to Germany in 1899. After World War I, it became part of Japan's Pacific Empire. And after World War II, it was handed over to the United States under United Nations trusteeship. From that point on, Palau was administered by the U.S. as part of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, a cluster of Micronesian islands that included the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and others. One by one, those neighbors chose independence. But Palau didn't follow. Why? Because Palau had a problem with nukes. In 1979, Palau adopted its own constitution, widely praised as one of the most progressive in the Pacific. It protected cultural identity, environmental rights, and women's participation in government. But there was one clause that would change everything. No nuclear weapons or nuclear waste would be allowed in Palau. It was a direct challenge to U.S. strategic interests in the Pacific, where nuclear submarines and warships roamed freely. To the U.S., this clause was an obstacle. To Palau, it was non-negotiable. 8 referendums, 1 stand. What followed was over a decade of political standoff. Between 1983 and 1993, Palau held 8 national referendums on whether to enter into a compact of free association with the U.S., the same type of agreement used by other island nations. Each time, the people voted. Each time, they supported the compact, but not by the 75% supermajority required by the Constitution. The result? Palau was caught in limbo, self-governing but not yet sovereign. And under the surface, pressure was rising. Assassinations, tension, and holding the line. Palau's stand came at a cost. In 1985, President Harun Remalik, a vocal defender of the nuclear-free constitution, was assassinated, an event that sent shockwaves through the country and remains unresolved in the public memory. Later, in 1988, another president, Lazarus Salih, died by suicide while under political investigation, deepening the country's sense of uncertainty. Despite the violence, the referendums, and intense U.S. pressure, Palau never backed down from its constitutional vision. A compact finally signed by the early 1990s, the tide began to shift. In 1993, a referendum finally passed, not because the people gave up on their ideals, but because a legal adjustment allowed the compact to be approved with a simple majority. The compromise. The compact respected Palau's nuclear-free zone, while allowing the U.S. to maintain defense responsibilities and offer financial aid. October 1, 1994, the world welcomes a new nation. On October 1, 1994, after more than 15 years of constitutional battles, political tragedy, and legal negotiations, Palau finally became a fully independent nation. It joined the United Nations as its 185th member. It raised a new flag, blue for the ocean, gold for the moon, and claimed its seat in a world that had long overlooked it. The nation that waited and won. Palau didn't win its freedom through war or mass protest. It won by refusing to rush, by valuing peace over speed, identity over pressure. In an era where independence was often defined by conflict, Palau's story was a quiet revolution, one that took its time, stood its ground, and reminded the world that true freedom means choosing your own way, even if it takes years to get there.